Hello, tubers. How are you today? Well, today I wanted to go over another passage. This time it's from 1 Kings, chapter 3. I'll be doing verses 16 through 28. And I did a video on this just recently, but I wanted to revisit it because I have some other tidbits for you to understand regarding to this particular passage. So here goes.
Then came there two women that were harlots unto the king, and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass, the third day after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. And this woman's child died in the night, because she overlaid it. And she arose at midnight, and took my son from beside me while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son which I did bear. And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king. Then said the king, The one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one, and half to the other. Then spake the woman, whose the living child was, unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son, and she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other said, Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it. Then the king answered and said, Give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged. And they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him, to do judgment.
Okay, so there goes the passage. And in the prior video I did, I was talking about how a mother's love is boundless. And our heavenly parents love us and they worry about us, just like this woman who almost lost her child because this other woman wanted to basically steal her child because she laid upon it and killed it, probably suffocated it to death. So that was the message I had in the prior one regarding this particular passage, showing the enormous love that parents have for their children, and I was just applying that to God the Father and our Heavenly Mother, their love for us that is just as strong and probably even stronger. The other thing I wanted to mention today was this. The first thing that it says in this particular passage that we went over just now was stating the Bible says this, and these weren't just two women, they weren't just any old women. This says, Then came there two women that were harlots unto the king and stood before him. Harlots is another word for prostitutes. So these women were prostitutes. They were harlots. And the Bible mentions that, and so you can't just kind of go over it and not address that these women. I mean, it wasn't just one was a harlot; they were both harlots, which is, I would think, quite odd. I don't think all the women back in those days were all harlots. So that the occurrence or the happenstance that two harlots came into the judge's chamber, so to speak, in front of the King Solomon, who was the judge back in those days, had to be a pretty good. It wasn't a coincidence. So I think this particular verse or this particular passage shows that the importance of having a man in a woman's life. Because my contention is this: if these women had men around, if they had, because these women had just little babies. So, approximately 9, 10 months ago, there were men in their lives, or at least a man in their life that father this particular baby. So, where are these men now? 9 months down the road, 10 months down the road, 11, 12 months down the road. Where are they now? So, and this happened to both of these women. And my contention is this: if there were two men sleeping or living with these particular women, I don't think this particular problem would ever come up. And the why I say that is this: I mean, if the man was any type of a man that's awake and not a drunk or whatever, in regards to the woman that slept on top of her baby, and that might have been because of the case that she might have been so tired because she was doing everything that she just fell asleep on top of her baby because she was just so exhausted. Um, Now, if there was a man there, he might have noticed that happening, and softly just moved her away from her baby and grabbed the baby, and he could have had the baby for a while, and another thing too, in regards to the other woman who had her baby stolen, if she had a man around, maybe the man would have been awake, and that never would have occurred because the woman wouldn't have been able to come, and grab the baby. I mean, these particular women must have been living under the same roof or very close to each other for them to know that they each have babies and to kind of go in and out of their houses or rooms and not throw any alarms. It seems to me that they kind of knew each other. So, so this just shows the importance of having a man in women's lives, and not so much the women's lives, but basically the babies, right? The baby's life, you know. And so I think that really shows in this particular story the importance of having a good man in women's lives. The God also talks about a thing called a prudent wife, and there was there's a passage that I did a little while ago regarding this particular verse, and it says, "House and riches are an inheritance from fathers, but a prudent wife is from Jehovah or God." So basically, that last part says a prudent wife is from Jehovah or from God. So a prudent wife is a gift from God. So for a man to have a prudent wife, a man has to do something for Jehovah. You're not going to get a gift for just doing nothing. So I would suspect that these men didn't get a prudent wife because they may not have been awarded a prudent wife because it comes from God. Now you may say, well, what is a prudent wife? I pull up this website here, peacefulsinglegirl.com, and it goes over what does prudent mean. And here it says wise, understanding, and sensible. All right, insightful, good, pleasant, congenial, understanding. So it says here 20 key attributes of a godly or a prudent woman. And if you just read over here, I'll just read it quickly. I'm not going to go over it in depth. But the traits are basically she is humbly open to instruction from God. She knows ways to treat others. She's able to speak the truth with love, respect, and kindness. She's not entitled. It is not a victim. She's gentle. So these are the traits of God. If you do the godly things, and I'm talking to men right now. If you're doing godly things, God is going to reward you with a prudent wife, which will have these particular traits. She'll be gracious and everything like that, because it also says, and that God says that a quarreling wife is like a constant dripping on the roof for the man. So what you want to have is a wife who's humble, she's quiet, she's gracious, she's God fearing. She's a woman who backs her man, and is patient, and she's virtuous. Okay, so these women, unfortunately, weren't these prudent women. They weren't prudent women. So everything has its consequence. And if you're going to be a harlot, then you're going to be running into these situations where a woman is going to try to steal your baby away from you